If you have a look at the expectations here, as Steve just alluded to, we're looking for 193,000 jobs to be created in the month, but last month we saw that blockbuster beat of more than 300,000 K. So could we be in for an upside surprise on this latest print?
I think actually the market should be positioned for a downside surprise to tomorrow's report. We're looking for a rise of about 170 to 175,000, so much more in line with that longer-standing 6-month and 12-month trend that we've seen in terms of top-line employment. Furthermore, we could see a downward revision to that earlier outsized report that you referred to in terms of February, up over 300,000. So I do think that while market expectations are much more modest relative to what we saw last month, I do think the risk for the employment report is to the weaker side.
Okay, so sub 200K would bring us back into that trend line, as you mentioned. With the revision for the February number, what are you looking for?
Well, I think we could see downward revision somewhere in the realm of 250,000, so a loss of about 50-60 to that original report, which is not unusual. We've seen these types of large revisions throughout the past year, but it still would be above a trend report, still a very positive report in that February number. But again, the focus will be not only the top line number for March, whether or not that momentum is carried forward, but also for the Fed. The Fed is going to be watching average hourly earnings. That's going to really be the key component for this report. And as Steve just announced, expectations are for a very modest rise of just 0.2 in terms of wages. So still no meaningful wage pressures as of yet.
So absolutely, companies are hiring, but wages remain muted. When are we going to see some meaningful wage inflation in the United States?
Well, we've been waiting for years now, but at this point, we still have a significant amount of slack in the labor market. Now, certainly the unemployment rate is at 4.1%, which implies a much tighter labor market. But we also know that 4.1% doesn't include the millions of Americans that have dropped out of the labor force. And the way we calculate unemployment, you have to be actively seeking a job to be counted as unemployed. So we're still looking at millions of Americans sitting on the sidelines waiting for conditions to improve before they begin to seek employment. And once those individuals do come back into the market, we would expect to see upward pressure on the unemployment rate, much more reflective of the still ample slack out there. So at this point, it could be quite some time, if at all, if we see wage pressures evident in the U.S. economy.